Well, I think we're waiting for a quorum for public safety. Right now, I think we only have two.
Well, we don't have Aaron Booker yet, do we?
Now, all you have is yourself and Paul.
Yeah, because Aaron's not here either. I'm just looking.
Yeah.
Do we want to,
I'll give Aaron a call if that's okay.
yes, please do.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, we need one more.
Do we want to start with operations? Do you have enough for that?
I just talked, sorry if I could jump in. I just talked to Aaron. He's just getting home from work. He's jumping on right now. Where
Okay,
does that
good.
put us with a quorum?
Yeah, that'll give us a quorum.
Sorry about that, everybody. There he is.
Sorry about that, everyone. Just got home from work. Running a little behind.
It's all right.
Nice to know somebody's working.
I think we have a quorum, Aaron, for your committee.
Excellent. Good. Let me get my oh. I know we have like 3 resolutions. Come on.
Hey, Aaron, I can name them off for you if you want. We can do that.
That'd be fine, Steve. Let's get this moving along since I was just a little bit late anyway. Go ahead, Steve,
Yeah.
while I'm waiting for mine to load up.
Okay, I guess you would just call the roll call first. I think it's yourself, Angie, John Butita, and Paul. I don't see Dorothy, Dan, or Fred on the line.
Okay, I see
So-
John Butita, Paul Arena, Angie, Fred Westcott, no. Dorothy Red, no, or Dan Fellers.
No.
Okay, I'm up here. Okay, is there anyone that has any public comment?
Okay, no one signed up.
All right, very good. On the agenda, D, resolution approving subcontractor agreement for the Department of Justice. Violence against women fiscal year 20, improving criminal justice responses to domestic violence, dating violence, and stalking program. Is this a renewal of an agreement, Steve?
I guess I would refer to Mr. Jakeway, and he can go from there.
Okay, gladly, Steve, and good to see everyone. This is a resolution seeking the chairman's signature on a contract with Remedies. It's to support our work in domestic violence, dating violence, and stalking. It's a continuation involving no county matching dollars. And if you'll allow, I'd ask Kelsey Hart, the project manager of that grant project, just to give you a brief overview of what that grant seeks to accomplish in our community and what this contract specifically provides for. Kelsey?
Hi, everyone. Tom said, I'm Kelsey Hart. I'm the project manager for our ICJR grant. This is a continuation grant from a federal grant we started in 2015. It's primarily focused on identifying and closing gaps related to orders of protection and no contact orders. So that includes a great deal of training for law enforcement and for prosecutors, and also includes a lot of collaboration between police, sheriffs, judiciary, probation, and victims advocates, which is what this contract is focused on. So as has been said, this is a contract with Remedies. It covers 2 full-time advocates, one out of adult probation who receives referrals from victims who have offenders on probation, and then is able to follow up and do safety planning and other legal advocacy with those survivors. It is a law enforcement victim advocate who's co-located in the basement of the CJC with Rockford PD, who's able to follow up with every victim who's listed on a police report, and then follow up and do advocacy in a variety of ways, safety planning, getting victims into shelter as needed, going to court, those sorts of things. And then it also covers a part-time advocate to do legal advocacy, court accompaniment, follow-ups after emergency orders of protection. So I'll just repeat what Tom said, no county matching funds. It is a continuation grant. These positions have been in place for the past 3 years already. That's that.
Yeah, good. That's why I asked if it was a continuation, because this all looked familiar. Tom, did you have more to add to it?
No, we're glad to answer any questions that you may have, but we're proud of this work, and we're hoping to continue the good work that we're doing together.
Yeah, thank goodness that we haven't. Mr.
Tom?
Arena. I'll go with
Tom,
Mr. Arena, and then I'll go with Angie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does the grant fully fund the obligation under the contract?
Yes, it does.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arena. Ms. Gorel?
How many years does this run? Is it only 1 year?
This
How
is
long
going
is
to
it
be, this is going to be a 3-year extension of the services.
3 years.
Okay.
Wow, excellent. Anything further, Ms. Gore?
Resolution is kind of tied into this one, is it not?
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit. The resolution's tied into this one?
Yeah, the next one, E.
E is going to be a number of contracts with our problem-solving courts to provide services to those involved in our drug court and mental health court programs.
Right.
Again,
Huge
more.
thing. Okay.
Ms. Goro? Anything more?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Mr. Butita?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is somebody from the state's attorney's office on the line?
I see Mr.
Yes,
Kurlinkus.
Here, and Mr. Kurlinkus is here.
Okay, I only asked that because in the past few contracts that we've done with Remedies, because I have a family member on the board of directors at Remedies, I've abstained from voting. Would that be the case here? Would you recommend this is a grant opposed to funding from the county?
The standard for abstention is whether or not you believe you would have a financial gain or some type of gain from your vote. And obviously, only you can personally assess that, Mr. Butita.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I don't believe I would have any financial gain in it, so I'll go ahead and vote in favor of it.
Okay, very good.
Okay, I don't see any other hands. Are there any other questions from any committee members?
Mr. Chairman, I think point of order, I don't think we motioned this and seconded it for discussion, so maybe we should do that before we vote.
Right. Is there a motion to approve this resolution? Motion by Mr. Butita, second by Mr. Arena. All those in favor of this resolution, say aye.
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 Any opposed? No opposed. The resolution approving the subcontractor agreement with the Department of Justice Violence Against Women fiscal year 20 has passed. Now, is there any discussion? Seeing none, we can move on to item E. The resolution approving subcontractors agreement for County of Winnebago problem-solving courts. Okay, is there
So moved.
Second.
motion by Ms. Gorel, second by Mr. Arena. Mr. Butita. Okay, all those in favor of this resolution, say aye.
Wait. This is
Discussion.
a different matter, right? We need to discuss this?
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Can we get an explanation, please?
Did you have a question, Mr. Arena?
Well, just an explanation on what it is. I see this Gateway Foundation and it's money for substance abuse. I'm wondering what the funding source is.
Ms. Hart or Mr. Jakeway?
Yeah, Chairman Booker, it's actually a group of 5 separate contracts between Rosecrans, Gateway, 2 more with Rosecrans, and then 1 with Court and Health Solutions, all in relation to our problem-solving court projects. And I'm going to ask our project manager, Emily Benke, to give you the explanation that you asked for.
There's Emily. Hi, Emily.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So the problem-solving courts are programs that require the defendants to participate in treatment as a condition of their probation to address the underlying substance abuse issues and mental health issues that brought them into the criminal justice system. These contracts that we're discussing are for those substance abuse and mental health services along with drug testing services. So the Gateway contract is for residential inpatient treatment for drug court and tip court, our mental health court. The Rosecrans Mental Health Services contract is for our tip court program and provides both substance abuse and mental health services to that program. There is a Rosecrans Recovery Court contract for a recovery coach, and that person provides intensive case management services to the drug court program. There is the contract for Coordinate Health Solutions is for drug testing for the probationers that are involved in these programs for both drug court and tip court. And then the last contract is for our Youth Recovery Court program. Youth Recovery Court provides substance abuse and mental health treatment services to juvenile probationers that are involved in the program. These are funded, except for the Youth Recovery Court program, they're all funded through Adult Redeploy Illinois, which is grant funding. There's no match requirement to the county for that program. And it's a reoccurring grant that we have received since, I believe, 2012. The Youth Recovery Court grant is federal funds through ICEJA, or BJA funds, and that grant program has been in place since 2014, I believe.
Wow, thank you, Emily. Another win-win for us. Wow, thank you.
And how long does the contract run?
Both of these are just for one fiscal year, but they are both for Youth Recovery Court. This is our third year of funding. And under this grant, there's multiple grants that can be applied for. So we will seek grant funding again next year. And Adult Redeploy Illinois funds are funds through the state of Illinois that have been diverted from prison populations with IDOC. So as long as Winnebago County continues to meet that reduction goal, we can keep applying for those funds year to year. And that grant application for next year has already been submitted.
Wow, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
This is
Ms.
State's Attorney Hyde Ross, if I could add something to what Emily had said. The State's Attorney's Office did write for the renewed grant a letter of support for these programs. They are an integral part of the criminal justice system, and they are overseen by Judge Janet Holmgren, who does an excellent job at trying to make sure that these individuals get the assistance they need so that we can decrease recidivism. And we do have an excellent track record in helping these individuals through drug court and through tip court.
Wow. Excellent.
Thank you,
Ms.
Mr.
Ross. Yeah, and Judge Holmgren, yeah, she's been a great advocate for us for quite some time. Thank you. Mr. Jakeway?
I just want to add, Mr. Booker, just so we're clear, these are grant programs. The Youth Recovery Court program does have a component of funding from the Public Safety Fund budgeted through the Circuit Court's office. And I thank you and appreciate the county's contribution towards that grant project. And just want to draw a distinction. That one does have some local funding. All these others are complete pass-through and grant-funded projects that we've been sustaining for years now.
All right, thank you. Do I see anyone else? Mr. Arena?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Jakeway, the funding do you know how much funding is coming from the public safety sales tax?
Arena, and I'm gonna defer to Emily, my subject matter expert on that one.
Hi, Emily.
Hi. So the program totals approximately $176,000 per year to run. And currently BJA funds are funding 43.5% of that.
And this is for 1 year?
1 year, correct.
Right. So, and this is for substance abuse?
The Youth Recovery Court program, the criteria is actually that they have to have a mental health disorder, but so often we see that the juveniles that are involved in delinquency court have both. So it's mental health and substance abuse. It funds having a therapist that works with the kids individually, a substance use disorder counselor, and a case manager who works with the families, because we know that often the root of the problem stems beyond the juvenile and into the family structure as well.
Right. So this contract begins right now, or when it's, as soon as it's approved?
Yes.
Okay. I think moving forward, it would be more appropriate for the funding that the county provides to come from the mental health sales tax, which I understand we're not going to begin to collect until October. So, Mr. Chapman, would it, I mean, should that be addressed now, or should we let this contract go through as it is now and then address it next year when we have the tax in place?
I guess it would be my recommendation that we fund it as we originally intended this year, and then look at it for next year.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me.
Yes,
This
go ahead.
does come out of the 1% sales tax, does it not?
Yes, I believe it does.
And that's what it would, and that's what the 1% jail sales tax was provided for, that these funds originally, when it was started, and then why it was voted on, that we would have funds like that coming out of that pocket. And so when you start going into other pockets, we'll have to really discuss that later on, because I know you're trying to alleviate some of that, some of the responsibility of that 1% tax, and that's not what that mental health tax is for. So yes, we are going to have to, before you even think about that, you're going to have to take a long look at it, because if we aren't even going to see a dollar before next fall, and it's going to be pretty skimpy, there's going to be a lot of other people who are standing in line when this one has already been provided for.
Right. I agree with you, Ms. Squirrel, because our Winnebago County Crime Commission of Armando Cardenas and that group, they watch stuff like this. And yes, programs such as recidivism, reducing recidivism, is big on the public safety sales tax. As you say, that's what it was intended for. So there'll have to be some discussion involving the Winnebago County Crime Commission and Mr. Cardenas and his group. And we'll have to bring that up at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Booker. The people do have to realize that that's money that was already delegated through that 1% sales tax. And we're going to have a lot of people who have no other avenue of getting funds, who are going to be waiting in line for when that mental health tax comes out. So as long as this is already be taken care of, how many others are we going to have to take care of that have no funding at all or any resource of doing it? So we will have to give this a lot of thought if you decide that anyone decides they want to dig into the new tax for mental health and forget about the 1% jail tax. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goro. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. We've got a motion and seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? No opposition. So I got to scroll back down to our final resolution. And that's item F on the agenda, resolution renewing the annual maintenance agreement for the X-ray scanners.
So moved.
Maintenance agreement for the X-ray scanners. It seems like we just did this like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So moved, so you can have discussion.
Second.
I got a motion by Ms. Gorel and a second by Mr. Arena. Discussion. As I said, renewing the annual maintenance agreement. And we worked with Ann Johns on this, and she's not on here. Mr. Chapman, are you?
I believe Mr. Franks can speak to this.
Mr. Franks.
Thank you, Chairman. We did just do it in October, but that was actually for last year, starting in February, because we missed the cutoff date, but they honored the contract from the very beginning. So this is actually this year's contract now.
Okay. Mr. Arena. Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Franks, is there an increase in cost?
Negative, no increase at all.
And you're satisfied with the service? Everything is good?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Goro, you have anything? I can't see, you're not on.
No, I'm
All right.
fine.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor of renewing the contract for the X-ray scanners, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing no opposition, the resolution carries. Any other matters for Public Safety Committee? Mr. Haney, Chairman Haney.
Yes, just real quick, I wanted to, since we have Tom Jakeway and we had some other folks with us, just wanted to thank the courts for the planning they did on the COVID stuff early, working with the sheriff, with the jail. And then I know they're working, I believe, with the Emergency Operations Center on some things that as well. So thank you very much for all your work, Tom, and pass that along to the chief.
Will do. Thank you for those comments, Chairman.
Yeah, and the grants that you guys continue to come forward with that doesn't cost the county anything. That's just fabulous for domestic violence and all the services. And then we got good stuff in at Remedies and Gateway. So that's fantastic. So and all the work you do too, Tom. So I appreciate it.
I appreciate your comments too. We're proud of it. We can't do it without your support.
Real good. Chief Deputy Saganek from the Sheriff's Department, anything? All right. Thank you. Seeing nothing else on the agenda, can I get a motion for adjournment? Got a motion by Mr. Butita to adjourn. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Ms.
Second.
Goro. All those in favor of adjournment? Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, Mr. Jakeway. See you all later.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I don't see any reason why we can't roll right into operations and administrative. We'll call the meeting to order. We'll start with roll call. Mr. Salgado. Mr. Arena.
Here.
Let the record reflect Mr. Salgado is in attendance.
Thank you.
Ms. Red. Mr. Hoffman.
I know he's here.
Joe's here. He didn't unmute himself yet. Joe Hoffman is with us. John Butita.
Here.
Gene Crosby. Where'd Gene go? She's away from her iPad right now. But we still have a quorum.
Yeah, I am here. I got it unmuted.
All right, good job, Joe. Steve, do you know if anybody signed up from the public?
No, Mr. Chairman, nobody.
All right, I'll omit that portion. We'll move on to item D, resolution awarding landscaping and grounds maintenance services, and I so move. Can I have a second? Second. Mr. Butita and Ms. Crosby. The item is now before us. Steve, can you talk to this at all, or I see here? I did look at the big packets.
I believe Mr. Franks can speak to it.
Excellent, Mr. Franks.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This is just the annual renewal and contract for the next 4 years, I do believe. 1 year with 3 renewals.
So how does this price line up with our previous price? And this is a new vendor, is that accurate?
Correct. Yes, they won the bid this year. BL Wellwood Services. We're actually saving $3,618 from the last 5-year contract per year.
Very good. I see there's quite the range in pricing from the other bids. I look forward, hopefully, these people are able to do a good job for us and keep
That's
it.
what I'm hoping.
I see you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I was curious too. There was a wide range there in the pricing on that. And I do have a little expertise of that as president of my condo association. Landscaping is our biggest expense. And our experience is that the cheapest guy always hasn't been the best guy. So I'm concerned, is this a 4-year contract? Or if we're not happy with them after a year, can we get out of this?
Is that directed to me?
Yeah.
Anybody.
Either Mr. Chapman, Mr. Franks, if we're not happy with these services, what's our plan of recourse? Can we cancel this contract?
Yes, we can. It's 1 year with 4 renewals. And I do believe there's the standard 60-day contract language to get out of it if they do not perform.
Do you recall who was the previous contract holder, Mr. Franks? Do you remember?
Lawn Care by Walter.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? I'll go to Mr. Arena, then Mr. Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the actual contract isn't in my packet. That we're approving a contract right now, correct?
Yes.
It should be here now. Will it be provided to us before we actually vote on it? No, actually, as soon as possible, it should be given to us. But before we get to the board floor, we should be able to see it. The renewals are at the same price, or is there an escalation in price year to year?
Mr. Franks?
It's the same price per year.
So this company at this price committed 4 years out?
Correct.
Yeah, I definitely want to see the actual contract before we vote on it on the floor.
Can you take care of that, Mr. Chapman? Can you see that we all get a copy of this contract?
Yes, I'll talk to the purchasing department. Ann Johns is not on tonight. Her sister passed away, so she's been assisting the family, but I'll talk to her about it.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Mr. Arena?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm okay.
Mr. Chapman?
Just one other item. I believe Mr. Franks, this particular contractor, the highway department is utilized last year. Was that correct? Or
Yes, that's correct. And they are also doing work for Rock River Reclamation, water reclamation.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion on this item? If not, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed to this resolution? Seeing none, we'll cast unanimous ayes. Are there any other matters for the Operations Committee? I do have one thing, but if anybody else has anything, I'll allow you to go first. Operationally, while we have State's Attorney Height Ross on the phone, I know all of us have received a few emails about the constitutional rights of the governor being able to force us to stay at home for more than 30 days. Has the State's Attorney's Office had a chance to look at anything, or could you take a look at anything? You know, is the governor within his rights to make us stay home or force a closure for more than 30 days?
Okay, so the governor has issued certain orders. Anyone who wants to challenge those orders, their avenue would be in court. It's not the state's attorney's job to challenge what the governor has issued regarding the pandemic in the state of Illinois. But there is, if someone believes that the governor has acted outside the boundaries of his authority, then that would be their recourse.
I thank you for that. I would, obviously, I'm not a lawyer. I would be very curious if in the one email, it cited that in the Illinois Constitution, it says the governor does not have the authority to go more than 30 days. I would be curious to have an answer for that if indeed the governor does or does not have the authority for more than 30 days.
Well, what I would say to you, Mr. Arena, is that all legal documents are subject to interpretation. And if there is a controversy over the interpretation, then that's where the courts can resolve that controversy. The governor has issued the original order. The governor then issued several subsequent orders extending and incorporating previous orders.
Thank you, State's Attorney Heidi Ross.
You're welcome.
Are there any other matters for this committee this evening? If not, can I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Hoffman, seconded by Ms. Crosby. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right. Since we got everybody on board, Mr. Chapman, are you ready to get the Finance Committee going?
Yes, sir, I am.
I just noticed Mr. McDonald stepped away from his, oh, he's back. So I'm going to call to order the Finance Committee for Thursday, April 16th. I'll take roll call. Myself here, Mr. Hoffman.
Present.
Mr. Girl.
Present.
All right, Mr. Fiducia. I don't think he's on. Mr. Schultz.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. McDonald.
Present.
All right, let the record reflect we do have a quorum. Mr. Chapman, is there anyone from the public that signed up or that we're aware of that wants to address this committee?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. With that, we'll omit the public comment and move on to item D, which is a budget allocation amendment 2020-018, the Starcom cost. And I so give the floor to Mr. Chapman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This particular amendment is just an amendment establishing a budget so we can reallocate the costs that for a portion of the Starcom project. Originally, we this particular year charged the entire amount to the general fund, and based on the original concept, certain departments were going to be paying for radios, etc., infrastructure related to the Starcom project out of their particular budget. The three areas that come to mind or that are part of this budget amendment is the 911, because we put in additional councils and equipment out at the county site for this particular project. Detention, which is utilizing the new radio system and that for their communications, and also animal services. So this just allocates the dollars really out of the general fund that we actually ended up making the payment out of back into these other funds, which is something that we'll do for the next 8 years. We have 8 years more of payments to make. So this just gets it in line, and in the future we'll budget in that fashion. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. As a rule of order, can I get a second? I didn't see a second. Mr. Girl, sorry about that. Any questions regarding the Starcom? Yes, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I originally voted no on Starcom because it expanded beyond the sheriff's department. Everybody in the world, or everybody in the county rather, seems like they've got them. We have to pay for airtime now. I did work with Mr. Gettner in IT to look at how many radios have not even been turned on yet, or the ones that have less than 10 hours airtime in the last year. I'm going to vote yes on this because it's helping us pay for it, taking the money from the people's departments that want to participate in the Starcom. So I don't want to confuse it. I don't support the money that we're spending on Starcom. I think it's way too expensive for what we're doing, but I'm going to vote yes tonight because it should come out of each department's budget that asked for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Mr. Hoffman?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to echo what Keith said, and I'm going to give it towards the juvenile detention home. I'm still trying to figure out why they needed Starcom radios.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions, comments? Mr. Girl?
Thank you, Chairman. Echoing what Mr. McDonald said, I would love to see that report on the radio usage over the last year, just so that we can define who may or may not need these radios and see if we can save a couple dollars. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Next item, we're moving on, is the fiscal year 2020 updated revenue expenditures, general and 1% public safety sales tax fund. And I will hand it over to Mr. Chapman and Ms. Tironi. I believe she's on the line, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, she is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I asked Molly to put this particular report together. It reflects most up-to-date revenues through February in the general fund and the 1% public safety sales tax fund. It also reflects the expenditures through that particular time. And if you don't mind, if I could ask her to maybe give us an idea of what's in the numbers and so on. So.
Sure, I'll go ahead.
Yep.
Good evening, everybody. This is through February. We have no property tax recognized yet in these numbers, so it does look a little lopsided because of that. We have 5 months of sales tax and other state taxing revenues. Couple months we had to accrue or estimate because we don't know the actuals. I used historical data to come up with that. So we have total revenues through February of $12.2 million. We have total expenditures of $20 million. So at the end of February, we have a loss in the general fund of $8.1 million. And again, at the bottom, I noted that we did do all of the debt service transfers in February per the abatements resolutions that totaled $2.7 million. Those have to be done for the full year in February. So that takes away from some of the state income. And again, we had no revenue reported for the property taxes. On the second page, we have the general fund departments and their expenditures through February as compared to budget. For 5 months, our target would be about 41.67%. So you can kind of get a feel for who is within their budget at this point in time. And then on the third page, we have the public safety sales tax. Their revenues through February were $11.3 million. Their expenditures were $11.1 million. And then they had the transfer for the debt service of $5.2 million. So at the end of February, they had a loss of $5 million. And then on page 4 are the details of the departments and their expenditures for the public safety sales tax fund.
Okay, does anybody have any questions regarding this information at this point in time? I know it's a lot. Mr. Chapman.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment in terms of the expenditure side. If you look at most of the departments, they're in pretty good shape. Primarily, I think because of personnel vacancies, things such as that over the course of the 5 months. We're talking about 5 months here from October through February. You know, we've had a number of departments that have had vacancies, and therefore, you know, we don't necessarily have are spending those dollars right now. The one area is that obviously I'm still concerned with, and I think we discussed this at the the finance committee meeting back in January is the sheriff's department. I've both in the jail area, the personnel and sheriff's department personnel, also the supplies and services area. Based on some projections that the sheriff's department did, they're looking at right now their personnel numbers being over by about $2.2 million by the end of the year, and their supplies and services number being over by about $1 million. So that's a concern in terms of where we're going to end up at, come September 30th. So I guess we need to somehow address that.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns? Mr. Schultz?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The obvious question is, you've had conversations, I'm sure, with the sheriff. What is he saying about this?
Well, I think Mr. Salgado and I have had conversations with him and so on, and I think, his concern or his thoughts are that the funds would come out of fund balance. They're going to have to presumably bring forth a budget amendment, I would presume, in both of those areas.
Schultz?
Yeah, just the obvious is that, I know unfortunately, we've had factions on the county board as it relates to this topic, but we have a history of spending beyond budget. We have a history of spending fund balances. We've drawn the balances down. You've heard me talk about this before. We don't have the fund balances available to us to continue to draw down. And that's not even talking about the COVID crisis. That's just dealing with, the trajectory that we've been on for multiple years. So I don't know how many, when this comes forward, will not approve that budget amendment. Based on history, it doesn't appear to make a difference as to whether we do or don't, because the money's going to be spent either way. But I do think that we probably should do some kind of assessment as to where the county board members are at with the spending beyond budget with impunity.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Anyone else have any questions or comments regarding this information? I do have a question for Mr. Chapman. And Mr. Chapman and Molly, I don't know, have you guys kind of done a projection where we might end up, forecast essentially? I know that towards, I think the next item, you kind of go into the revenue expenditure. That's the next item, but is there something like that format that you guys provided to us where our ending fund balance is going to end up? I think that would be kind of give some highlight, I think, for ourselves for two things. One, it gives us an opportunity where we might end up, and kind of trying to see what actions we need to maybe take on that aspect of it. I know that it doesn't help that we're currently in a crisis of with the COVID crisis virus on that aspect of it. But obviously, it's good to know what the impact's going to be, and for this fiscal cycle, and then obviously, kind of projecting out for next year. So, and keeping in line with our internal policy we have of the 25% fund balance on that aspect of it. So I don't know, Mr. Chapman, if you guys have thought about it or with Molly had that conversation to kind of essentially kind of start putting that together, because sooner or later, the budget cycle is going to come here. So we kind of have to start thinking about that as well, planning for that. So just don't know if you have any comments or thoughts, Molly or Mr. Chapman, on that. Go ahead, Mr. Chapman.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think you're correct. I think we need to project this out through the end of the year. Again, we're looking at 5 months worth of expenses. We have another 7 months to go. But we can, try and make some projections. As far as the revenue side goes, I think the next item we're going to speak to may shed some light on that.
Okay.
Again, that's just based on assumptions and everything. I mean, things are changing every day, but I think as Molly was involved with a webinar the other morning with a number of finance directors and that throughout the state, and I think the comment that was made by Cook County was back in 2008 we had somewhat of an inkling that things were going down the tube back then, but here in 2020 it's like everybody just fell off a cliff, and I think it's a good analogy in terms of when you start looking at the revenue side of things. And these are finance directors that have been involved, for a number of years. Cook County, Kane County, DuPage, a number of those larger counties. So they're all fighting the same issue that we're fighting, but we will try and put something together that makes sense.
Appreciate that. Since we're on that same track, I guess we'll just go on to the next item, which is the discussion of the revenue and expenditure impact based on COVID. So Mr. Chapman, if you want to just go in it and walk us through that spreadsheet, those sheets that you provided.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure. What I tried to do is look at, since we're already almost 6 months into the fiscal year, since our fiscal year starts in October, a lot of the state revenues, though, we're always behind in terms of getting the money back from the state, sales tax, use tax, replacement tax, things. Actually, the public safety sales tax, you're always 3 months behind. So we won't know the impact of what happened here in March or last March till June, and what's happening right now till July. So it's hard to project, but I did make some assumptions in terms of these numbers that I did put together as far as reductions in revenues and so on, utilizing what we've actually collected for the first 3, 4, 5 months, however months it is, in terms of the individual revenue source, and then made certain assumptions as to what the impact would be from this pandemic that we're involved with. So I think you can look at the individual revenue sources. It doesn't cover everything. There's certain revenues in there that probably won't be impacted at this particular time, so I didn't necessarily include those in there. But what I did is pretty much look at the larger revenues that we have and the difference between the original budget that we set forth and what the revised budget is. I think in the general fund we were let's see here, looking at a reduction of about $3.7 million. The 1% public safety sales tax, about 2.9 million, which is a total about 6.6. And again, these are all assumptions just based on what we know right now. This particular crisis in terms of the economy has only been going on for 30 days. So, it's going to be tough to decide or to determine where we're at. But, when you have the unemployment numbers that they're talking about, people not being able to get out and spend dollars, things such as that, it's going to impact the numbers. The courts are, not operating at 100%. Other areas are being affected too. If you read the narratives related to the different revenue sources, you can kind of tell what's going on. The one good point is that the real estate market, even though the house sales are not necessarily where they should be because of the restrictions. There are a lot of refinancings going on right now, and the recorder's office has stayed open to accommodate the title companies and that in order to get the transactions done. So with that, I've entertained any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Chapman on the revenue projections or anything in general regarding the COVID? I do have a question, Mr. Chapman. I've noticed that there has been an article potentially of Mr. Sanowski proposing property payments on those. I don't know the logistics of it, how it would impact, if there would be a delay, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So have you have any sense, information on that, on what potentially could be, would there be an impact for this fiscal cycle and or next year? Just wanted to get, because those are some things that I'm hearing and they're good. I mean, there's people unemployed at this point in time. I know people are hurting. You know, some people have gotten their money, their $1,200, $700, whatever it is. I'm fortunate that I still employed a little bit here, and you know, those other people could use that money for sure. So I just wanted to get a sense and idea if you've heard anything and what that could mean for us from that perspective. Not saying that it's going to happen, but I always like to be aware of the situation that might be an impact to us.
Well, I'm not necessarily informed as to what his particular bill is asking for. I think it has to do with waiving penalties or something on the particular taxes and so on. I think that you know, we need to get our tax bills out on time. I think we've got the actual multipliers received from the state, so I think the county clerk's office is determining the rates at this time, and I would presume probably sometime early in May the tax bills will be going out. I can't speak for the treasurer, but I assume that's the process. There are a number of taxing districts here in the county that rely upon those taxes, and including the county. If you start delaying those taxes, then you're looking at issuing tax anticipation notes and so on, which cost interest to the taxing districts, and you know, it just creates additional problems. A lot of the taxes are paid through escrow, and presumably those the banks and so on have the escrow monies already in place, so I don't think that would necessarily impact them. So that's my my take on it.
Any other questions for Mr. Chapman or Molly regarding the revenue projections? Yes, Mr. Haney.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Salgado. The only thing I've heard on that, about a month ago, a local businessman brought up that concept that Joe Sosnowski just ran with. And it created some internal discussions. I know Steve mentioned, you know, that's something we may want to steer clear of just based on our financial position. I think we look, if I'm mistaken, Dave, tell me, but we looked at it and we determined internally between the treasurer, state's attorney, that we could not as a county make a decision at the local level to delay or not collect the or waive penalties on property taxes for, you know, a period of time. But I did see late today, just so you know, the scuttlebutt that Jack Franks and McHenry County are doing that at the local level. So I know it's in the water, people are talking about it, but I'm more unclear than ever. I know it is around to some of the other local taxing bodies about Joe's proposal, and I believe you're going to see an effort to speak out against that, because some of the really small, I know Keith McDonald mentioned that some of the fire protection districts, they're so heavily dependent on property taxes and quarter to quarter and on a very tight time frame with cash flow that it could really mess them up. So I don't know where it goes. The only other thing I would add, if just quickly, I was on a call today with some of the mayors Mayor Zula is the mayor of Roscoe. He's also a local 150 guy, and so he has trades level conversations that he wouldn't have as an elected official. But he was talking to some of the federal folks, and they said, when we get a little past this, there's not going to be another stimulus package. There could be multiple. But when we get to a certain point, the terms, like it was going to be a New Deal level infrastructure package. That doesn't solve all of our problems tonight. It's not a now thing, but there is going to be a major thing coming down the road that I think we need to plan for, because if we can offset capital needs, in the county with highway, then, it frees up money in other areas. It's not going to solve all our problems. I'm not naive to that, but we should be preparing when and where we can so that we get our fair share. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haney. Anyone else have any questions, comments on this topic? Yes, Mr. Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few quick items. One of the things for a future meeting, Steve, if we could get some feedback on right now, for better or worse, the savings on the expenditure side that we're seeing in the other categories of the general fund are making up for through the first 5 months. The overage by the sheriff, I'm seeing about a 5% or about a $900,000 additional overage to date in those line items for the sheriff, but then that's being offset. So the question is that going to continue in terms of the savings? You said the sheriff's basically said he's going to keep spending at his current level, devil may care. But on the savings side, are we going to see that continued through the remainder of the year? Or if you could give us some feedback on that. And it doesn't have to be tonight. But then another just observation in terms of the projections, we've got this $6.6 million shortfall on the income side. We budgeted the $600,000 budget problem. That's what we brought into this year. And so, we're looking at the 7 point something million that comes out the other side of that. And so that, at least in terms of large numbers, we already have that in front of us. And then I'm sorry, I'm just taking a look here. Well, those two pieces are really significant in terms of, empowering information. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, are there any other matters for the Finance Committee? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to adjourn? Mr. Gurl, Mr. Hoffman, second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. Stay safe, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.